An hour before my wedding, I found out that the man who raised me was not my father. I was sitting in the hotel room, fixing my veil in the mirror. My hands were shaking, but I thought it was just nerves. The makeup artist had left 15 minutes earlier, and I was alone for the first time that morning. The dress felt heavier than it had in the fitting room, like every stitch was pressing down on my shoulders. There was a knock at the door, a quick, uneven rhythm. When I opened it, my father stepped inside. He looked pale, like he had not slept all night. His tie was crooked, his jacket unbuttoned. Behind him stood a man I had never seen before, taller than my father, dark hair streaked with gray, a sharp jawline. He held his hands clasped in front of him, as if he was in trouble and waiting for a verdict. My father closed the door. "We need to talk," he said quietly, without looking me in the eyes. "This man is your real father." "He was already in the hotel," my father added quickly, as if reading my thoughts. "He said he would tell you in the lobby, in front of the guests, if I didn't take him to you myself. I thought, at least this way you'd hear it in private." His voice cracked on the last word. "I tried to make him wait in the hallway," my father continued, "but he wouldn't. He said he'd follow me in whether I let him or not. So I opened the door myself. I froze. For a second, the room went silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I waited for him to laugh, to explain, to say it was some kind of terrible joke, but he did not. "He came today," my father went on, his voice uneven. "He says he's leaving soon, for a long time. This is his only chance to see you. He wanted to speak with you before the ceremony, but I..." He stopped, his jaw tightening. I could not stop him. I glanced at the stranger. He was watching me closely, like he was memorizing my face. There was something unsettling in the way his eyes didn't move, like he was afraid to blink and miss something. "I don't understand," I said, my voice thin. "Why now?" Neither of them answered. My father's eyes darted to the floor. The stranger shifted his weight, but stayed silent. The veil felt tight around my head, and I pulled it back, needing air. The weight of the dress, the smell of the perfume, the heat in the room, it all closed in at once. I stepped back toward the bed, pressing my hands to the side of my gown to keep them from shaking. My father finally looked at me. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but he was ready to tell everyone. Your mother, the guests, everyone. I couldn't let that happen in front of everyone you know." The stranger took a step forward. "I'm not here to ruin your day," he said, his voice low but steady. "I just wanted to see you. Once." I stared at him, waiting for something familiar. A smile, a gesture, anything that could connect us. But there was nothing. His face meant nothing to me. My father moved between us as if to shield me. "We don't have to do this now," he said, his voice sharp. "You've already done enough by showing up." The stranger's expression hardened. "I've done enough? You've kept her from me her entire life." The word life hit me harder than I expected. Entire life. My father who had taught me to ride a bike, who had been at every school event, who had walked me into my first apartment, was not the man standing in front of me now. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to speak. "I think you should both leave." Neither moved. My father's shoulders sagged, and for a moment I thought he might break down. The stranger only watched me, silent, as if waiting for me to change my mind. I walked to the door and opened it. My hands were steady this time. "Please, I need to get ready." The stranger's gaze lingered on me one last time before he stepped out into the hall. My father hesitated, his hand half raising, like he wanted to touch my arm. But then he followed. When the door clicked shut, I locked it and leaned against it. The mirror across the room reflected the dress, the veil, the flowers on the nightstand. But all I could see was the look on my father's face when he said, "This man is your real father." I had 45 minutes until the ceremony. 45 minutes to stand up in front of everyone and pretend I was fine. How was I supposed to walk down that aisle now? I stayed by the door for a long time, listening to the muffled sounds of people moving in the hallway. The air felt heavy, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. I needed to think, to push back the shock, to remember that up until an hour ago, everything had felt normal. Before today, I believed we were just a regular family. My parents had been together for 32 years. They shared a car, filed taxes together, bickered about what to watch on TV, but they were always there for me. Every birthday, every graduation, every breakup, I could count on them to be in the same room, sitting side by side. When I was a kid, I thought my mom was the more unpredictable one. She was quick with a joke, sometimes a little too honest about her past. She would tell stories about the wild years before she met my dad, but she never went into detail. She'd just wave it off, say she was young and restless, that it was all before real life started. I didn't ask questions. It was just another part of her personality, the same way she could never pass up a yard sale or let milk sit in the fridge past the expiration date. My dad was the steady one. He was the kind of man who kept track of oil changes, who remembered to water the plants when my mom forgot. He worked the same job for decades and never once complained about it. When I had a school play in second grade, he took off the work to be there. When my first car broke down on the side of the highway, he was there before the tow truck. Stability was his language, and I understood it perfectly. That was the image I had of us. Solid, reliable, even if not overly sentimental. We were not the kind of family that spilled every feeling, but I never doubted that they loved me. If we argued, it was about small things. Me forgetting to call, my mom insisting on sending leftovers home with me, my dad telling me to check my tire pressure. The morning of the wedding, I'd been surrounded by that same stability. My mom had been bustling around, giving last-minute opinions on the flowers and the centerpieces. My dad had been in the background, calm as ever, making sure the vendors had the right directions. If there was tension between them, I didn't notice it. Looking back now, maybe I was too focused on the day ahead to see anything else. The hair, the makeup, the dress. It all demanded my attention. My phone buzzed with messages from bridesmaids and relatives. It felt like every second was accounted for. There was no space in my head for secrets. That's why the knock at the door had felt so out of place. My dad never came to me looking like that. Unshaven, tie crooked, eyes red. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen him so uncollected. And the man behind him, I still didn't have a name for him, just an image burned into my mind. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The hotel comforter was stiff and cold under the thin fabric of my dress. I tried to replay the past in my head, looking for cracks, anything that might have hinted at this moment. I remembered how, in high school, I'd once found an old photo in a drawer. My mom was in it, younger, standing next to a man who wasn't my dad. They were at some outdoor event, smiling like they shared a private joke. I'd asked about it, and she'd said he was just an old friend. I believed her. I put the photo back and forgot about it. I remembered a Thanksgiving years ago when my mom had too much wine and teased my dad in front of relatives, calling him the safest choice she ever made. Everyone laughed, including him. But later I saw the way he sat alone in the kitchen, his hand wrapped around a glass of water, staring at the floor. None of it had seemed important at the time. It was just family. We all had moments like that. I took a sip of water from the glass the hotel had left by the bed, but it didn't help. My mouth was dry. I looked at my reflection again. The veil was back in place, my hair smooth, my lipstick perfect. From the outside, I was exactly who I'd been an hour ago, a bride about to get married. Inside, something had shifted, and I couldn't push it back into place. I checked the time on my phone. 40 minutes. The bridal party would be coming soon to escort me downstairs. I thought about calling my mom, but my fingers wouldn't move. I didn't know what I would say to her, and I wasn't ready to hear her voice. So I sat there, staring at the carpet, forcing myself to focus on the facts I knew before this morning. My dad was my dad. My parents had been married since before I was born. We had a life together, full of routines and traditions that didn't leave room for strangers showing up on wedding days. Maybe if I held onto that image hard enough, I could get through the next few hours. The knock at the door came again, not rushed this time, but steady, like someone who belonged there. I didn't move. My heart thudded against the inside of my dress. I told myself it was probably one of my bridesmaids or the photographer. But I didn't get up right away, because now I knew sometimes the people who knock aren't who you expect. And sometimes they bring the kind of truth you can't unhear. And I had no idea who or what might be standing on the other side of that door next. The knocking stopped, but I kept staring at the door like it might start again. I wanted someone to come in, someone who wasn't holding a secret like a loaded weapon. But I also wanted to be alone until the ceremony started. When I finally stood, I moved slowly, careful not to trip on the layers of fabric around my feet. I peeked through the peephole. Empty hallway, just a patterned carpet and a row of identical doors. I turned back to the bed, sat down again, and pressed my palms into my lap. My phone was still on the nightstand, the screen lighting up every few seconds with messages from the bridal party. I didn't answer any of them. My thoughts kept circling back to the last few months, searching for signs that something like this could happen. The truth was, my mother had been acting differently. Subtle things at first, things I brushed off. It started when we were discussing the ceremony details. She asked, almost casually, who would be walking me down the aisle. I laughed, thinking it was obvious. Dad, of course. But she didn't laugh with me. She hesitated, then suggested maybe someone else could do it. A close friend, my uncle. She said it in a way that made it sound like she was concerned about my father's comfort, like maybe he didn't want the spotlight. I'd brought it up to him later. Mom thinks you might not want to walk me down the aisle, I told him. His face tightened just a little, barely noticeable unless you knew him. Of course I'll walk you, he said. Why wouldn't I? After that, I dismissed the whole thing. I told myself my mom was just being over-involved, the way she sometimes got when big events were coming up. But she kept circling back to it. Every time we talked about the seating chart, or the music, or the flowers, she'd slip in a comment like, we could do something different for the processional. I started avoiding wedding talk with her altogether. Then there was the phone. I'd never known my mom to keep her phone locked, She used to leave it on the kitchen counter all the time, open to whatever she'd been doing, texting friends, scrolling through recipes. But sometime in the spring, I noticed a password screen when she picked it up. I only saw it because I happened to be sitting next to her when it buzzed. She grabbed it too quickly, tilting the screen away from me before entering the code. It felt off. Not dramatic enough to confront her about, but enough to stick in the back of my mind. By summer, she was different in other ways too. Less talkative, quick to change the subject if it drifted toward her or my dad. At the time, I assumed it was stress from the wedding planning. My parents had always been supportive, but big events could bring out tension in any family. I didn't know then that those moments were cracks forming in something I thought was solid. The morning of the wedding, I'd noticed one more thing. When I'd asked her to double-check that my dad's boutonniere was ready, she'd hesitated before answering. Not because she didn't know, but like she wasn't sure if she should even be the one taking care of it. She ended up saying yes, it was ready, but the pause stayed with me. Now, sitting in that hotel room, every one of those small moments started stringing together into something bigger. The aisle question, the phone, the hesitation. I could see it clearly now, but only because I'd been forced to. The clock on my phone told me I had 35 minutes left. I picked it up and opened the messages from my bridesmaids. They were downstairs, checking in with the coordinator. Everything was ready. I typed a quick, okay, and sent it, not trusting myself to say anything more. I thought about calling my dad, my real dad, the one who raised me, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't even know what name to use in my head anymore. Dad, stepdad, something else. None of it felt right. Instead, I stood up and walked to the window. The parking lot below was filling with cars. I imagined my guests stepping out, straightening jackets, smoothing dresses, not knowing what had just happened upstairs. Somewhere in that building, both of those men, my father and the stranger, were waiting. The thought made my stomach turn. I sat back down and tried to picture the ceremony. I'd rehearsed it so many times. The music, the walk, my dad's arm linked with mine. But every time I pictured it now, his face blurred, and the stranger's face appeared beside me instead. I shook my head, trying to push it out. But once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. 25 minutes left. I decided to check my makeup. The mirror showed the same perfect image as before, but I could see the tension in my mouth, the tightness around my eyes. I wondered if anyone else would notice. The room phone rang, sharp in the quiet. I jumped before crossing the room to answer it. It was the coordinator, letting me know they'd be sending the bridal party up in 10 minutes. I said thank you and hung up. My voice sounded steady, even though my hands weren't. I sat on the bed again, the dress pulling around me. I thought about the way my mom's voice had changed every time the aisle came up. I thought about my dad's tight expression when I told him what she'd said. I realized I didn't actually know what either of them wanted anymore. The knock came again, 3 short raps, then silence. I stood, walked to the door, and paused with my hand on the knob. This time, I didn't look through the peephole. I opened it. It was one of my bridesmaids, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what I was saying yes to anymore. I nodded, but the word "ready" felt like something borrowed. My bridesmaid stepped in, checked my hem, and handed me my bouquet. She kept her smile steady, the way people do when they are trying not to add weight to something already heavy. "Have you seen my mom?" I asked. "She is around," she said. "The coordinator said she checked in earlier. Maybe she's with the florist." My phone was still silent. I tried calling my mom again as we moved into the hallway. It went straight to voicemail. I ended the call without leaving a message. My bridesmaid linked her arm with mine, guiding me toward the elevators. We didn't talk. I could feel her glance at me now and then, like she was waiting for a signal to ask what was wrong. I did not give one. In the elevator, I watched the floor numbers drop. It felt like standing on a stage behind a curtain, listening to the audience settle. My bridesmaid adjusted a loose pin in my hair. "Your dad is with the groomsmen," she said. "He will meet you at the entrance to the registration hall." The words should have steadied me. They did the opposite. When the doors opened, the lobby was a small storm of wedding movement. Guests in formal clothes, a stroller trying to squeeze past a floral cart, a photographer speaking quickly into a headset. I scanned for my mother. Nothing. I scanned again and saw her near a pillar, half hidden, turned away from the room. She wasn't alone. A man stood close to her, talking low. My stomach tightened before my mind caught up. I could not see his face yet, just the line of his shoulders and the way my mother held her arms tight across her chest. She nodded once, sharply, and looked toward the entrance to the registration hall. Her shoulders were tight, like she was holding her breath. She didn't step away from him, as if afraid that moving would push him into doing exactly what he had threatened. Then she moved, fast, slipping into the stream of guests without looking back. The man stayed where he was, waiting, eyes on the doorway like he owned the ground in front of it. My bridesmaid touched my elbow. "They want you outside the doors for a minute, while they set up the processional." Her voice was light, practiced. I only heard the part about the doors. The doors where that man was staring. We crossed the lobby. I tried to breathe in even counts. I looked for my dad, but he wasn't at the entrance yet. The coordinator saw me and hurried over, hands lifted like she was catching a fragile object. "We will start in 5, she said. "Your mother arrived earlier with a guest. Everything is under control." She avoided my eyes on the word guest. I let it pass like I hadn't noticed. Then I saw him turn, the stranger from my room, closer now. He had a calm look that didn't match the noise around us. He watched me the way people study a photo they have seen in a drawer for years. I felt the same cold pressure I had felt upstairs. Before I could react, my dad appeared at my side, breath uneven, tie still wrong. He took my hand like he had done it 1,000 times, but his fingers were cold. "We need 1 minute," he told the coordinator. She nodded and backed away. My bridesmaid stepped aside with her, pretending to study the order cards. I kept my eyes on my dad. "Mom came with him?" He swallowed. "He found her this morning." The words came out careful, like he had rehearsed them and still hated each one. "He said he would tell everyone at the ceremony. He said he would stand up when they asked about objections and say it." The room shifted around that sentence. I pictured him saying it into a microphone, the air leaving the building. My dad's jaw worked. "She was scared," he said. "She thought if she brought him, we could manage it. He promised he would speak to me first." "Did he?" I asked. My dad glanced at the man. He walked up to me the second I got here. He said you deserved to know. Today. He said he was leaving town and could not wait. His mouth tightened. I told him this wasn't his decision. He didn't care. People moved between us and the stranger. a stream of fabrics and perfume, but I felt him like a spotlight. I looked for my mother again and saw her halfway down the corridor, pretending to check a program, not coming any closer. She was waiting too, waiting for me to absorb it, waiting to see if I would make a scene. I tried to keep him away from you, my dad said. His voice dropped. I failed at that. I didn't want you to hear it from him. I didn't want you to hear it at all. Not like this. The coordinator floated back. 2 minutes, she whispered, eyes flicking between my face and my father's. Did Mom know he was coming? I asked, still watching her not watch me. My dad's answer came slow. He called her first, early. She didn't tell me until he was already here. He rubbed his forehead like the effort of those hours was still burning through him. He said if she refused, he would walk into the hall and start talking. The man shifted his stance, scanning the entrance, scanning me. He looked determined, not angry, like someone who had decided that causing damage was acceptable if it got him what he wanted. I realized my father had been moving shields around the board all morning. I had been upstairs tying a veil. The coordinator signaled to the musicians through the open doors. Guests began to take their seats. The noise dropped to a focused hum. My bridesmaid returned to my side, holding the edge of my dress to keep it from catching. Are we okay? She asked. Meaning, can you walk? Can you stand? Can you be seen? I nodded. It was the only motion I could manage. My dad straightened his tie, but his hands were clumsy, so I fixed it for him. He let me, eyes on my face, not on the knot. When I finished, he didn't step away. He stayed close, like distance would make the words worse. He glanced once more at the stranger, then back at me. His voice was almost a whisper. I am sorry. He was going to say it in front of everyone. I could not let that happen. The doors to the hall opened wider. The music began. The stranger stayed by the entrance, watching the path I would take. My mother stayed in the shadows of the corridor, not moving to me, not moving to him. Ready? The coordinator mouthed. My dad's hand trembled against mine. I felt it, and I did not pull away. Let's walk, I said. We stepped toward the threshold, and the man did not blink. My dad leaned closer, voice unsteady, and gave me the last thing he had left to give. I couldn't stop him, he said. I won't let him take this from you too. I didn't answer him. I just tightened my grip on his arm and stepped forward. The music filled the air. The guests turned their heads, and I kept my eyes on the aisle ahead. I did not look at the stranger. I did not look at my mother. If I did, I knew my expression would betray too much. So I fixed it in place, calm, almost blank, just enough to carry me through the moment. The walk to the front of the room felt both fast and endless. People smiled, whispered, lifted their phones. I heard my name in quiet voices, my dress rustling against the carpet. Every step was deliberate. My father's arm was steady now, but I could feel the tension in it, like he was holding something inside as tightly as I was. When we reached the front, I didn't let go right away. The officiant gave the nod. My father stepped aside, and I took my place. My fiancé's eyes searched mine, looking for nerves, maybe for joy. I gave him the same expression I'd given everyone else. The ceremony began. Words washed over me, scripted and familiar. I didn't hear them all. I was too aware of the shape of the room, the rows of faces, the movement at the back where people still shuffled in, the silent exchange between my mother and the stranger when they thought no one was watching. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, her leaning toward him, saying something short, his mouth tightening, his head shaking. She glanced toward me, saw that I was looking, and immediately shifted her attention to her program. The officiant's voice brought me back for a moment. Questions, vows, the kind of pauses where people are supposed to smile. I followed along, kept my voice even, repeated the words exactly as they were given. When the ceremony ended, there was the usual applause, the music swelling again. We turned to walk back down the aisle together. My new husband's hand was warm in mine. As we passed the back row, I let my eyes flick to the stranger. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just watched me walk past, like he was taking in proof of something. My mother was already looking at him when I passed her, her mouth pressed into a thin line. Once we were outside the hall, the photographer began arranging the wedding party for pictures. My husband leaned in, asked quietly if I was okay. I told him yes. I didn't elaborate. I couldn't, not with so many ears nearby. Between group shots, I excused myself to the restroom. Inside, I pulled out my phone and called my aunt. She answered on the second ring. "You're married already?" she asked, cheerful. "Aunt Linda," I said, keeping my voice low. "Do you know who's here?" There was a pause. "He showed up?" "Yes," I said. "In the hotel room, before the ceremony, Dad brought him in." She exhaled slowly. "Your mother has been afraid of this for years." I pressed my back to the wall. "So you knew." "She told me after you went to college," she said. "She thought it was over, but he found her a few months ago. She said he was asking questions. I didn't think he'd do this today." "She said he paid for my schooling?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "That's what she told me," my aunt said. "He sent money to her account. Your dad knew, but they never told you. She thought the truth would ruin everything." I closed my eyes. My hands were shaking now, not from the weight of the dress, but from the flood of pieces falling into place. "Why now?" I asked. "Because he wants you to know," she said. "And because if he told you today, you couldn't ignore it." I didn't answer. She filled the silence. "You don't owe him anything. Remember that." I hung up before I could say anything I'd regret. When I stepped back into the reception area, the music had started, and people were finding their seats. My mother was near the head table, talking to a cousin, smiling as if she hadn't brought a secret into the room like a guest. The stranger was standing near the wall, his hands in his pockets, scanning the crowd. I didn't go to either of them. I found my maid of honor instead, asked her to get me a glass of water. She didn't question it. The rest of the evening was a blur of toasts, clinking glasses, posed smiles for the photographer. I moved from table to table, thanking guests, keeping my words short. I saw the stranger speak to a few people. Polite, quick conversations. But he never approached me again. My mother stayed busy, always with someone at her side, as if to make sure I couldn't corner her. I didn't force anything. I didn't ask questions in front of others. I didn't show that I knew more than I was supposed to. Instead, I watched. I listened. I kept my face steady and waited for the night to end. Every so often, my father's eyes would find mine across the room. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. We were both holding the same line. But I knew this wasn't over. Not for him. Not for me. And definitely not for the man who had decided that my wedding day was the right time to make himself known. It caught up with me when the DJ tapped the mic and asked everyone to clear the floor for the father-daughter dance. The room shifted toward the center, Chairs scraping, napkins dropped, phones lifted. My husband squeezed my hand and stepped back like we had planned. I kept my eyes on the empty dance floor and felt the pull of two men at the edges of the room. My mother was near the bar, pretending to listen to a cousin. She did not look at me. The stranger stood by the back wall, chin raised, waiting to see which way I would move. My dad hovered near the head table, uncertain, as if he would take a step only if I called him. The DJ announced my name and my father's, and the crowd started clapping on autopilot. I did not move. I scanned the groomsmen until I found Mark, my best friend since high school, and my husband's best man. He watched my face, already reading what I needed. I lifted my hand and crooked a finger once. He came without a word. I took his arm and walked to the middle of the floor. The clapping thinned into confusion. The DJ stalled, eyes flicking to the coordinator. I heard my mother's voice say my name, small and warning, but I did not turn. I waited until the room went quiet enough to carry a short sentence. "You both can sit," I said, looking first at my dad, then at the stranger. "Tonight I will be led by someone who has always been honest with me." No one moved for a breath. Then the DJ, grateful for direction, hit play. The song began, soft and familiar, and Mark placed his hand at my shoulder blade like we had done 100 times at parties where no one else wanted to dance. He didn't ask questions. He kept his eyes steady and his mouth shut. We turned in slow circles, and the whispers started. People angled in their chairs. Some lifted phones again, not for videos this time, but for texts. I kept my face plain. I did not search for my mother. I did not look at the stranger. I let my eyes pass once over my dad. His chin dipped, then lifted, like a man swallowing something that would not go down. "Are you okay?" Mark asked under the music. "Just dance," I said. He tightened his hand slightly in answer. We moved through the first chorus, and I breathed in time with the steps. When I finally risked a glance toward the back wall, the stranger's expression had changed. He wasn't angry. He was measuring, like he was filing this moment next to whatever history he believed he had with me. My mother finally turned to look at me. Her smile was gone. She took a small step forward, stopped, then retreated, choosing distance over action. The message was clear. Let it pass. Let the night continue. Deal with the rest later. I gave her nothing. The song ended. There was a beat of silence, then scattered applause that felt like people clapping for themselves, relieved they did not have to pick a side out loud. I hugged Mark, quick and firm, then faced the room. I could feel the next tradition lining up. The toasts, the cake, the easy milestones. I did not want the night to inhale and pretend nothing had happened. I took the microphone. The coordinator's eyes widened. My husband looked worried, but he didn't move to stop me. I kept it short because I had to. "Thank you all for being here," I said. My voice did not shake. "I'm grateful for everyone who showed up with love and truth today." I paused on that last word and let it sit. "Please, enjoy the night." I handed the mic back and stepped away before anyone could ask for more. The band shifted into an upbeat song. The dance floor filled, and the machine of a wedding started moving again. I walked to the edge of the room and stopped in front of my dad. He searched my face like he expected blame. I didn't give it to him there. "Do you want to sit?" I asked. He nodded once. We found 2 chairs against the wall. He clasped his hands, then unclasped them. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I did," I said. He looked down. I'm sorry. I stared at the dance floor. I know. From the corner of my eye, I saw the stranger begin to move toward us. My mother noticed too and cut across the room to intercept him, touching his sleeve, pulling him sideways with a few tight words. He let her guide him for 3 steps, then shook her off and kept coming. He stopped in front of us. "Can we talk?" he asked. My dad's shoulders went rigid. I stood. "Not here," I said. A small circle of silence opened around us. People pretended to look elsewhere while actually watching. My husband took a step in our direction. I shook my head once, and he stayed where he was. The stranger gestured toward the service hallway off the ballroom. 2 minutes, he said. That's it. I didn't want a scene. I also didn't want his voice raised over music later. I nodded and walked with him, keeping 5 feet of space between us. My dad stood, but did not follow. My mother trailed at a distance, then stopped when she saw where we were heading. In the quiet of the hallway, the thud of bass faded. The stranger kept his hands visible, as if to prove he meant no harm. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," he said. "I wanted you to know." "You did humiliate me," I said. "You just chose a room full of people to do it in." He flinched, then steadied. "I have tried to reach you for months. Your mother blocked me. Your father told me to go away. I respected that for years. I ran out of patience." "This is not your day," I said. "It was never yours to take." He swallowed. "I sent money for your education. I watched from far away. I made mistakes then, but I am here now. You are here because you wanted the power that comes with a crowd," I said. "You wanted witnesses." His jaw worked. "I wanted acknowledgement." I let the words sit. "You got something else." He breathed out through his nose, a contained sound. "May I speak with you tomorrow?" "No," I said. "Not tomorrow." "When?" "I don't know." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded once, like a man filing a defeat under temporary. "Congratulations," he said. It sounded wrong in the hallway. I turned and left him there. My mother stepped out from her waiting spot, eyes asking for permission to speak. I gave her none and kept walking. Back in the ballroom, I returned to my dad. He stood when he saw me, searching my face again for damage he could not fix. I touched his sleeve, a small thank you for staying in his chair. The band announced the next dance. People whooped. The room pretended to be normal. I picked up my glass and drank water I did not want. My husband reached me and tilted his head in question. I said, "Later." He nodded. He accepts one-word answers when the alternative is chaos. Across the room, the stranger had returned to the wall. My mother hovered near him, thrown between him and me like a rope pulled tight. No one approached them. Their space was marked off by curiosity and fear. I stood very still and let the noise wash back over me. The statement had been made. The choice was public. 2 men could sit. 1 friend could lead. The rest of the night could finish without pretending I hadn't seen what I had seen. I did not look back at the dance floor. I kept my eyes forward and waited for the next song to end. I stood there until the song ended, then moved back into the crowd. People pulled me into photos. I smiled when needed, laughed when expected. No one asked anything real, just about the cake or music. When the coordinator lined us up for the couple's first dance, I glanced at the back wall. He was gone. My mother noticed too and stayed where she was, clapping when the DJ said our names. During the dance, my husband searched my face for answers. I gave none. Guests hugged us when the song ended. I avoided quiet corners where someone might ask more than I wanted to answer. Near the cake, my mother approached when no one was close. "You embarrassed us," she said. "There were children here. Family." "I protected myself," I said. "And him," nodding at my dad. She frowned. "You think you know everything? You don't." "I know enough for tonight." She straightened. "We will talk tomorrow." I didn't agree. The toasts came and went. My dad smiled when expected, but never spoke. Once the DJ opened the floor, the room relaxed. We said goodbye to the last guests near midnight. In the elevator, my husband finally asked, "Do you want to tell me?" I told him. A man claimed to be my biological father. My mother let him come. My dad tried to stop him. "He paid for my college," I added. "Mom kept him in the background. Dad knew." "Do you want to see him again?" he asked. "Not now. Maybe never." "We deal with today tonight," he said. By morning, messages waited. From my aunt, "Call me." From my mother, "Breakfast?" From an unknown number, "I am leaving town this afternoon. I would like 5 minutes." I called my dad first. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I will be if you are," he said. We met in the lobby. "I wanted to tell you," he said. "Your mother asked me not to. I thought it would keep us together. That's on me." "It would have hurt, but it would have been clean." "I thought I was protecting you. I was protecting myself," he said. I asked about the money. "Yes." She said it was the only way he'd stay out of your life. I should have refused. He promised to do whatever I wanted now. "Stay with me," I said. That afternoon, another text came. "Last chance." I ignored it. Later, my mother left a voicemail. "He forced my hand. He threatened to ruin your day. I made the best of a bad choice. Call me." I didn't. 2 weeks later, a law office letter arrived. Request for DNA test for medical history purposes. No financial claims. We hired a lawyer. I agreed to the test to end it. At the clinic, my dad waited by the door. 2 weeks later, the results confirmed what I already knew. My lawyer sent a short statement. No ongoing contact requested. Their reply was one sentence. Acknowledgement appreciated. After that, the noise stopped. My mother sent small texts, family dinners, baby photos. I answered with 1 or 2 words. My dad and I kept a steady pace. Short calls, coffee twice a month. The wedding photos stayed in a folder I didn't open. Friends asked for links. I said the gallery was delayed. My husband stopped asking. The man never contacted me directly again. Once, my attorney forwarded his request for an address for medical updates. I didn't answer. My mother kept his number. Sometimes she typed it wrong in messages to me, then deleted it before sending. By the time the thank you cards were mailed, the story had shrunk to 3 sentences for anyone who hadn't been there. I let them think it was smaller than it was. When people asked who walked me down the aisle, I said, "A friend." My dad heard me once and didn't correct me. He just stood closer. A year passed before I realized I no longer checked my phone, expecting his name to appear. By then, my mother and I hadn't spoken in months. Her last message had been about a cousin's engagement, sent without a question or a request to call back. I didn't reply. When I saw her name on my screen after that, I let it go to voicemail. Most of the time, she didn't leave one. My father and I kept our rhythm. Short calls, occasional coffee. We spoke about ordinary things, work, the weather, a movie he thought I'd like. Neither of us mentioned the man again. He didn't ask about my mother. I didn't ask if they were still living in the same house the same way. The man never contacted me directly. The only sign of him came through my attorney 6 months after the wedding. an email with a single line. If she ever wants to know about her medical history, she can reach me through this address. I told my attorney to archive it. My husband stopped bringing up the wedding altogether. The photos stayed in the folder on my laptop. We never framed any. If people asked, I said we hadn't had time to choose. That was easier than explaining why the pictures felt like evidence instead of memories. When our anniversary came, we kept it quiet. Dinner at home, no family, no speeches. My husband gave me a small gold bracelet. I wore it for the rest of the night and took it off before bed. One afternoon, my aunt called without warning. She didn't mention my mother at first, just asked about work, about the apartment. Then she said, "She talks about you, you know. She just doesn't know how to start over." I didn't answer. "She says she thought she was protecting you," my aunt continued. "I think she was protecting herself." "I know," I said. "Do you want me to tell her you're okay?" "I'm not," I said. "But you can tell her I'm fine." We hung up without saying goodbye. That winter, my father had minor surgery. I sat in the waiting room, flipping through the same 3 magazines, until the nurse came to get me. When I walked into recovery, he smiled like it was nothing. Like I hadn't been sitting there wondering if I'd wasted too much time staying angry. On the drive home, he asked if I wanted to stop for coffee. We sat in a booth, drinking slowly. He didn't mention the wedding or the man. Instead, he asked if my husband and I were thinking about moving to a bigger place. It was his way of reminding me there were still future things worth talking about. Spring came, and with it a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photo. Me at age 5, holding a balloon, my mother beside me, and a man half-cropped out of the frame. I knew the jawline before I saw the rest. There was no note. I didn't keep it. By summer, I'd stopped looking for him in public places. For months after the wedding, I'd catch myself scanning faces in airports, coffee shops, parking lots, as if he might appear again. Eventually, I understood he'd had his moment and taken it. Whatever he wanted beyond that wasn't mine to carry. My mother sent one last message in the fall. "I'm sorry," it read. "Nothing else?" I didn't answer. Not because I hadn't been waiting to hear it, but because there was no way to open the door just enough for that sentence and keep the rest of it out. Sometimes when my father and I sit in silence over coffee, I wonder if he's thinking about the same day. He never says, neither do I. A year is enough time for people to forget details. Friends who were at the wedding no longer bring it up. New acquaintances only know the short version. A friend walked me down the aisle. No one asks why. That's the part I've learned to protect. How quickly the truth can be turned into something that sounds harmless if you keep it small enough. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my mother again. I don't know if he's still in the same city, or if he's already tried this with someone else. I do know that my wedding day became the line between before and after, and nothing on the far side looks like it used to. The people who were supposed to stand still didn't, and I'm still deciding where that leaves me. I am not telling this for sympathy. I am telling it because silence has not made it smaller. A year has passed, and it still sits in my head exactly as it did that morning. The night before our first anniversary, I opened the wedding album link for the first time. My husband had sent it to me months earlier. I had ignored it, telling him I would look when I was ready. I wasn't ready, but I clicked anyway. The first images were from the hotel room. Me fixing my veil, the makeup artist leaning close, my dress spread across the bed. Then the photos moved to the hall. my father in the background, slightly out of focus. My mother's back turned in every shot. The stranger wasn't in a single frame. The photographer had done their job, capturing only the parts people wanted to see. There were no photos of me with my parents together. None of my father walking me down the aisle. None of my mother adjusting my dress. It was as if they had been guests, not family. I scrolled through to the end, the last dance when most guests had gone, and the floor was half empty. My husband and I smiled for the camera like nothing was missing. I closed the link without saving a single image. That week, my father came over for dinner. We ate at the table, washed the dishes, then sat in the living room without turning on the TV. He stayed until it was fully dark outside. When he hugged me goodbye, it lingered a moment too long. The kind of hug that says what words can't. The holidays came. My mother didn't call. My aunt mentioned she was spending them with cousins in another state. She didn't offer me a number. I didn't ask for it. My father came over on Christmas Eve. We made coffee and sat at the kitchen counter. He didn't bring her up. In January, I saw the stranger again. Not in person, on the local news, in the background of a story about a community event. He was standing with a group, clapping for someone else, looking like any other man who had shown up for a photo. I watched for a few seconds, then turned the TV off. My husband doesn't ask about him anymore. Neither does my father. It's as if we've agreed he belongs to another life, one we're not interested in opening again. Still, there are nights when I replay the knock at the hotel room door, my father's pale face, the stranger behind him, the words, "This man is your real father," the way the room tilted after that. It doesn't fade. Sometimes I think about writing to him, not to reconnect, just to close it myself. But I never start. I don't trust that he would take it as an ending. I suspect he would see it as an opening, and I can't risk that. My mother's last message, 2 words, "I'm sorry," is still saved on my phone. I've read it enough times to know every pixel of the screen it sits on. I've never replied. I don't know if that's punishment or self-preservation. A year later, I still divide my life into before and after. Before, when my family was one shape. After, when it broke into pieces I didn't choose. The after isn't loud anymore. It's quiet in the way a locked room is quiet. Friends don't bring up the wedding now. The ones who were there have stopped hinting about the tension they noticed. New people hear the short version, that a friend walked me down the aisle, and they don't ask why. That's what I protect the most. The part that can be turned into something harmless if I keep it small enough. My father and I still meet for coffee twice a month. We talk about work, movies, the weather. We don't talk about that day. But sometimes when the conversation falls silent, I can tell he's thinking about it. I am too. I don't know if I'll speak to my mother again. I don't know if the stranger is still in the same city. I don't know if he tells anyone else the story of the day he met me. What I do know is that my wedding day became the line between what I thought I knew and what was real. And nothing on this side of the line looks the same. In the album, there is still an empty space where my parents should be. I've stopped wondering if I'll fill it. Some spaces stay blank. I tell this because the truth didn't free me. It just stayed where it landed, and I've had to live inside it. The last time I opened that album, I clicked through the images once, closed the laptop, and left the room dark. Her key was still on the counter. I didn't touch it. I turned off the light and walked out. What would you do in my place? Please write your thoughts in the comments. I will be happy to read them.